Oh, black screen, you crack me up again. Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. You see, I was just drinking this actual real-life alcohol, not grape juice, as I've joked about many times in the past, because I am now actually 21 and can drink this legally. Yeah, I'm still not quite used to it though. So, some of you might remember a video that I made ages and ages and ages ago, by which I mean like a year and a half ago, called Subnautica, a horror game in disguise, which is probably one of the best titles for a video that I have ever come up with, as can be evidenced by the fact that that video has like 200,000 views based solely on the strength of its title alone, because I guarantee you it was not based on the quality of the video, because I rewatched it just now to make this video, and holy crap, it is dog shit. Like, if you go watch that video, you'll see that I just never pause to take a breath at all. I keep talking and talking and talking, and I never stop, and I never stop, and I never stop, and it gets annoying and annoying and annoying. Holy crap. Okay, I cannot, I want to go back in time and punch myself in the face for ever making that and thinking it was okay. But anyways, the point of that video was that I really liked the game, and that it was kind of hard to get people to try, because it was an early access survival game, which there are billions of on Steam. They have a really bad reputation. I don't think there's ever really been a single really good one that's really come out and been, blown everyone's pants off. But that said, there have been a billion really bad ones. So when Subnautica came out, and I really liked it, I was like, hey, everyone that I know, play this game, it's amazing! And I had the worst time trying to convince anyone to play it just because of the game type and because of the genre and because of the fact that it was early access. So the point of that video was a recommendation spot, basically, where I go over why the game's good and say, okay, here you go, try to play it, it's really good, I promise. But now, the game is finally out of early access, and I want to talk about the game again. A, because I've been playing it for the past, 35 hours this week, and for the fact that that video, like I said earlier, isn't very good, so I want a decently made introduction to Subnautica on my channel. And the other reason I want to talk about Subnautica again is because, as I replayed it this week, I realized that holy shit, I think this might end up being my game of the year. And we're in fucking January right now. So, to provide some context, I played Subnautica at the very start of 2016, and even back then, I think it would have qualified for number 2 or number 1 on my game of the year list, had I included it then. But I didn't, because the game was still in early access, and my thinking was that, okay, when the game comes out, I'll include it in the top 10 of the year list in the year that it finally releases. Because I don't really want to include early access games that are still changing and still unfinished and whatnot. Which is also the reason why I haven't included Factorio in any top 10 games of the year list, despite it being one of my favorite games of all time at this point. But the point is, even back in 2016, I considered it top 10 of the year potential. Then, when I played it again in 2017, I was like, holy shit, this could also very easily end up in my top 10 of the year this year as well, which 2017 was a stacked fucking year for video games. So me thinking that again, thinking it was still a contender for a high tier spot in the game of the year list for 2017, goes to show just how good the game is. And I was kind of expecting it and kind of hoping it to release at the tail end of 2017, so that I could put it in the top 10 video and be like, hey everyone, this game is amazing, please go play it. But they waited a month to release it. They released it in January, and then I couldn't include it at the top 10 games of 2017 list. But that said, even now, I still think it'll end up at the number 1 spot on this year's list, because A, it's not going to be nearly as strong of a year as 2017, or at least it doesn't appear to be at the moment, and B, it is just that fucking good. That is how good of a game Subnautica is, that it could have legitimately qualified for a high-tier top 10 game of the year list spot pretty much any of the last few years. So, that being said, Scy, why is Subnautica such a good game? Well, I will explain. So, in Subnautica, the game starts out and you are on the crew of a spaceship called the Aurora, as it descends into an unknown planet on the far reaches of space, only to be shot down and have a crash landing. So the game starts with you running to your escape pod, ejecting from it, watching the ship blow up upon atmospheric re-entry as you crash land and get knocked out. So after waking up, you put a small fire out, before climbing out of your escape pod and seeing the shipwrecked Aurora in the distance, before looking around and noticing that you're in the middle of an alien ocean alone. So from there, you now have to survive. But despite this being a survival game, the normal routine of a survival game, i.e. gathering food, gathering water, making shelter, and waiting out the nights while eventually exploring, is not really the core loop of Subnautica. Yeah, you do have a hunger and thirst meter if you're playing on survival difficulty, but that's all really easily alleviated. You're in the ocean, and there are fish all around you, and water all around you. So that's never much of a concern, really. So that being said, the core gameplay loop of Subnautica is far more about exploration than survival. So you start out and you're in the Shallows area, which is this nice little coral reef section where you can dive down 10 feet, generally at most, right? That's about as deep as it gets there. And there are a bunch of friendly fish, and there are like one or two things that can kind of hurt you, but they're all very well telegraphed, and it's really very welcoming as the game goes. And then you start exploring a little bit further out, and have to start going just a bit deeper. 20 meters, 30 meters underwater, that kind of stuff, right? As you go into the creepvine zone and explore there. And there are a few more dangerous predators there, at least more so than there were in the Shallows. And then from there, you go out further and you go out deeper, as you go into the red grass section, which is like 100 meters down. And then you go further, and then you go deeper, and on and on and on and on from there. But there's an issue with that. Namely, the fact that you have to breathe, and water is not generally known for being great for that, right? So the issue then is that you're limited in how deep you can go by your breath. So the first thing you might want to do is build an oxygen tank so that you can dive deeper and dive longer. And that actually, to get sidetracked for a second real quick, brings me to one of my absolute favorite things about Subnautica, which is the art style and the general art design of the world and the things you're interacting with. Now, in most survival games, you knock down trees, Minecraft style, and, build huts out of wood and clay and shit, right? And that's fine, I don't have an issue with that, but when every single survival game does that, it can get really old really fast. Now, the fantastic thing about Subnautica is that it's set in the future, and your escape pod has what is essentially a 3D printer inside of it. So if you bring it just a giant scrap of metal from the crashed ship's hull, it can break that down and then rebuild it as something useful, like an oxygen tank, provided you have the other necessary materials. And this is not an oxygen tank made out of wood or whatever the fuck. It's an actual sleek-looking, normal oxygen tank, and you can go further than that. So everything in the game, instead of being made out of, wood and grass and shit, is made out of like this really sleek 1950s style World of Tomorrow or like Aperture Science-ish futuristic materials. And it all just looks so cool. But getting back to what you do in the game, so you build an oxygen tank so that you can dive deeper. But suddenly you need to be able to defend yourself, because it turns out the red grass zone about 100 meters down has a decent amount of things that kind of want to kill you. So you might want to build a knife so that you can defend yourself. Or more than that, you might want to build a stasis gun that you can shoot at things to temporarily freeze them in place for like 20 seconds. Or you may want to build a base, because you'll be finding a lot of raw materials used in crafting, and you're going to want some place to put it all that's not your inventory, which is decently small in this game. Or you might want to build a submarine so that you can go even deeper than that and still have an oxygen supply. Or, if you want to go really deep, we're talking like 900 fucking meters at this point, you might want to build a Prawn Suit, a giant like robotic exoskeleton that allows you to drill from gigantic ore deposits. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is not unlocked from the get-go. You have to find the schematics for it and scan it, generally inside wrecks that you find in the ocean. So again, that goes back to the core gameplay loop, which in Subnautica is explore so that you can then find things and build things that let you go deeper, so that you can explore and find things and get things that allow you to go deeper than that. And all the while, you're trying to unravel the mystery of why your ship got shot down in the first place, and why you've been infected with this weird alien disease, and all the while, gathering the necessary components to build a rocket to get you back home at the end of the game. So all of that reveals a few core things about Subnautica that sets it apart from the competition. One, as I said, the core gameplay loop of the game is explore so that you can build things and dive deeper, rather than the usual core gameplay loop of gather food, gather water, and maybe do some light exploration on the side. So it's far more about exploration than most survival games are. Number two is that there's actually a story in it, and not just any story, an actually really decently written story. The Subnautica devs actually hired the guy who wrote the Talos Principle to come onto this game and write flavor text from everything to the smallest little bit of coral you find in the sea, to the giant monsters you'll encounter throughout, to audio logs from crew members you can find, to just everything about the game, and it really shows. Now, I fucking love the dialogue and story in the Talos Principle, so I love that guy's work, and it very much shows here. All the text and all the PDAs and all the scans you can find are just so incredibly interesting that you want to get it all. It's not just oh, I must go around scanning every piece of coral so that I can increase the 100% completion counter. No, I wanted to go scan every little piece of coral I found because I was so invested in the world and exploring this bizarre alien ocean and seeing all the amazing things that they thought of to say about even the weirdest, tiniest little plant you can find in the sea. So far we've talked about some of the things that sort of separate Subnautica from the rest of the competition. That namely being that A, it has much more of a focus on exploration so that you can continue to explore rather than just survival for survival's sake. B, it's a lot more focused on a storyline and on a constant progression path than the more free-form sort of gameplay you're generally used to. C, the art style is far more interesting in being a sort of very futuristic type setting as opposed to the general, grass roofs and sticks and weapons and shit. And D, the fact that the game has amazing writing that is way better than it really had to be. But all that doesn't really get at the core of why I really love Subnautica and why I find it really difficult to stop playing. And that is best encapsulated, I think, in a story that I told in the previous video about Subnautica as well. So I have hardcore thalassophobia, which is a big word that means I am terrified of the ocean, of open water, of, being in a watery space where I can't see anything around me, of deep water, of fish, of things like that, right? Now, thalassophobia is best encapsulated, I think, in this image that I found on the internet a few years ago that depicts a bunch of, Cthulhian monsters reaching up to grab a boat, and then you scroll up to the top, and it's just a lovely, happy day, and there's a sunny boat sailing along and being all fine. That knowledge that anything could be just 10 feet, not even just a few feet below you, ready to come up and eat you and, torture you. That is thalassophobia, and I have it bad. It's to the point that I won't even get in, lakes. Even lakes that I know, or at least have been told, that are just empty, it's filled with rainwater, there's no fish in it. Even then, I still will not get in them. Even rivers where I can touch the bottom, I'm still sort of afraid. When we went to Cozumel a few years ago on vacation, my family and I did, I wouldn't get in the fucking ocean, even though I could see everything around me. The water was crystal clear, even though I could touch the bottom of the floor, because there were fish everywhere, and I was just scared that one of them would come up and eat me or some shit. That is how deep my thalassophobia runs. And I freely admit, generally, at least, on Earth and in real life, it is very much an irrational fear. But Subnautica Subnautica brings the thalassophobia, I think, out of everyone. Like, even my friends who don't have thalassophobia, who are totally fine being in open water, I think Subnautica gives them that fear. Because, unlike in real life, where it is sort of irrational and you can make justifications to explain to yourself why that totally isn't a problem, there very much are things in Subnautica's ocean that want to kill you. There are giant fish everywhere. Everything is an unknown. Every corner you turn around could have some new thing that wants to eat you or kill you or hurt you or something. And this only gets worse the deeper you go. And as I said, the game is about exploration and progressively going deeper. So as you go, the zones get more dangerous and the water gets blacker and it gets more difficult to see and visibility becomes a bigger deal. And God, it is so horrifying. Like, Subnautica is such a fantastic horror game, even if you wouldn't guess it from looking at, screenshots on Steam or whatever. And I pontificated at the end of my previous Subnautica video that Subnautica was either making my fears worse or curing them, because as I played the game, I wanted to see more. I didn't shut the game off and be like, oh no, I'm never playing this ever again, go away, go away, go away. I wanted to play more, I wanted to explore more, I wanted to go deeper, I wanted to see what else was in this alien ocean. And I couldn't decide whether that was, like, if I was just so encapsulated by the game that I was pushing past my fear, or if the game was capitalizing on my fears and giving me an adrenaline rush all the time, and that itself made me want to play more. Well, after having played more of it, and on my third playthrough now, I can definitely say my real-life thalassophobia is definitely not gone. I still will not get in a fucking lake. But I also think Subnautica is not as scary as it first seems. Now we're getting into some of the issues that I do have with the game, and one of them is that in Subnautica, information is power. At the start of the game, you know nothing. It's an alien ocean, you have no idea what the fuck's going on, anything could be out to kill you, you have no idea what's going on. Now, slowly, gradually, as you play the game and scan things and experience things, that starts to change. Like, in the Creepvine zone, you have the Stalkers, who initially these big alligator gar type things who want to eat you, and initially you might be scared of them, but after spending some time around them, you realize that they're not that fast, you can swim faster than them, and even if they do get you, they bite you for like 1/8 your maximum health and then swim away. And you have an infinitely refilling health kit in your survival pod. So it doesn't take long for the Creepvine zone to become just sort of passé, basically as safe as the shallows are, and for the Stalkers to become a minor annoyance. And as you go deeper, in the red grass zone, for example, there are the sand sharks who want to get you, and there are the biters who latch onto your arm and hurt you. And yeah, they're scary at first, but eventually you realize that they're fairly easily outsped if you have some of the speed upgrades, like the upgraded Ultra Glide fins, or the Aqua Glide, or anything that lets you swim faster. And the bloodsuckers are easily killed with a knife. So, as soon as you figure that out, that zone is also no longer scary, and as soon as you figure out the fucking reefbacks aren't trying to kill you all the time, like I thought they were the first time I saw them, and I was horrified of them. So, then the red grass zone isn't scary either, but I sort of expected that to change as you go deeper, and it kinda doesn't, which is a shame. I mean, yeah, when you get when you're like 1,400 feet deep, yeah, the things down there are pretty dangerous and will kill you in like 1 or 2 shots. But it doesn't really... There's a feeling of like horror that I don't feel is capitalized on. Like, yeah, there are the big Leviathan creatures that can kill you in 1 shot if you're out of a vehicle and can easily wreck whatever vehicles you may happen to be in, but so long as, if you're in a vehicle, which you generally are if you're in the later half of the game and diving that deep, then the creatures don't really become much of a concern, because you can generally outrun them in that vehicle and then repair the vehicle whenever you get to the place you need to be. And aside from these big giant creatures who are relatively rare, nothing much hurts you. Like, I had big hopes for like the giant psychic squid, or not psychic squid, there's not the psychic like mantis guys, the like giant squid crab monster things to be like a serious major threat. But I walked up to one and then it just EMP blasted me, and that was pretty much its only attack. It didn't really do much besides that. So it had a biting attack, but that also did jack shit. So like, even like this giant monster down at like 500 meters is barely more of a threat to me than the frickin' the stalkers in the creepvine zone. So, and that's, you know, you go a bit deeper than that into some of the later game areas, and, you know, the Lost River only really has the giant Leviathan in it, which is fairly easy to avoid if you're looking for it, and the final lava zones, they have the psychic fucking, like, mantis guys who can teleport you out of your vehicle, which hurts for a second, and then you get back in and use a health kit, which are, you know, infinitely refillable. And then there are the sea dragon guys at the end, who throw fireballs that also don't deal that much damage and are really easy to avoid. So I feel like the game could have capitalized way harder than it did on making the ocean, like, as you go down, it becomes more and more and more dangerous. Like, in my second run-through that I just did, that lasted about 20 hours, I at no point felt the need to build any weapons. Like, okay, there aren't really weapons in Subnautica. You're very much like a researcher, and the game has that vibe, so it doesn't give you a gun or anything. But there are things you can do to, like, sort of distract the wildlife or get them away from you. Like, there's a little gravity torpedo you can shoot that explodes harmlessly, and then launches a little gravity thing that pulls the enemies in and stops them from moving. You know, or there's the stun gun that, like, launches a sphere and, you know, it freezes enemies in place or stuff like that. I never really felt the need to build any of that, because you could generally fairly easily outrun them, and repairing is dirt simple, because you just hold your welder to a thing and, you know, watch the repair bar go up, so that was never a concern. And yeah, I just never felt in danger like I wanted to in the later parts of the game. Like, there's this anime that I love called Made in Abyss, and the whole idea of that is that you're, like, descending into this, like, unknowable Lovecraftian pit, basically, and after every single layer that you go down, the deeper that you go down, the more horrifying and the more dangerous the monsters in that get. And that was something I was sort of hoping Subnautica would offer, that it really doesn't beyond a point. So I think the main appeal of Subnautica, which is its horror, or the main appeal for me at least, which is its horror factor, the horror that comes along with exploring this unknown alien ocean, is diminished once you've spent enough time in the zones to realize that you're not really ever in that much danger. And even then, if you're not playing on survival mode, which is the one-hit kill, or not survival, there's a mode where it's like if you die once, you lose the game like wipes itself, right? Like an Iron Man mode, basically. If you're not playing on that, if you're playing on survival, then if you die, just get respawned back in your escape pod, which is a fairly minor punishment, all things considered. So the worst you ever really risk at any given time is maybe 10 minutes of progress or swimming back to where you were. So I never really felt like I was in that much danger, and as such, it did sort of take some of the joy and some of the, you know, fear and adrenaline out of the later areas of the game, and certainly in the starting areas of the game once you know what's up. So there's that, which I think is like, the fear factor of Subnautica is at both times, or is at once, both the major selling point of the game and the major criticism I have of the game, because it doesn't do it well enough for it to be the major selling point like I want it to be. So yeah, there's some issues with that. Other things that I feel I should bring up. I feel like some of the recipes you acquire throughout the game should be standard. There are a couple of them, like the beacon and the multi-purpose room. You have to scan both of those, and first of all, the beacons are very easy to miss because they're fucking tiny, and second, the first multi-purpose room you can find is a, like, surprisingly long way into the game, either really deep down or in a really far off area you're not likely to find for a while. So that, you won't get this, like, the multi-purpose room is this huge room that's really useful to, like, store shit in, to have a bunch of things in, and if you don't have that, you really only have, like, tiny little tubes to, like, tiny little, like, makeshift hallways with which to put things in, which makes your bases feel cramped until you get that room. So I feel like the multipurpose room should be standard in the habitat builder, and the beacon should be standard at the fabricator. So there are a few rebalancing of several things I would do. In addition to that, I also think that some recipes are too difficult to find. There are so many things to scan and so many new items you can build as the game progresses, but it's also really easy for you to never come across any of that, some of which could be, like, of the utmost importance to you playing the game. For example, in my second playthrough of the game, the one I just did, I never found the battery charger. I found the power cell charger, but never the battery charger. So all the things that require batteries in the game, which is most everything cool, I had to keep building new batteries for because I never found the thing that lets me fucking recharge them. So I ended the game with a storage locker full of like 20 empty batteries and was constantly short on copper because of that. So copper became like the most valuable thing in the world. You know, gold and silver I didn't give a shit about, but oh my god, I found a vein of copper, thank Christ! Which is not at all the progression system should be working in that game. So I feel like there are certain upgrades and things you can scan that should be either come normally or at least way more common than they are. Maybe remove a few fragments here and make them standard, and then maybe like duplicates of them deeper. Like the things you could unlock in the game are limited by the depth you're at. Like certain zones will only ever contain certain items to scan. And I feel like even though like you may have come across the complete things you need to build a certain artifact, and it may be disappointing to find other fragments of them at deeper levels at that point, I still feel like making the fragments for things a couple zones higher more common in the deeper areas, just to ensure that everyone got pretty much everything, would have been a smarter idea there. There are also some things the game doesn't explain very well. Like, when I first played through the game, I never built the scanner room because the materials required were a bit too difficult to find for me to just casually make it for the hell of it. And I thought it would be just a pointless, like, oh, I can send cameras out and, you know, go see places that are deeper. But no, there's actually, like, the scanner room was one of the most useful things in the entire fucking world, I found out. Like, it can, like, locate any material in, like, a range around it and then mark it on your HUD. So the amount of times I went out, like, just searching for the one piece of scrap metal I needed to complete this one thing I was trying to build, and spent 20 minutes, like, you know, looking around my home base for the one piece of scrap metal I hadn't found yet, when I could have just built a scanner room and made it way easier for myself. So yeah, I feel like the game is a bit bad at explaining what things are useful or what things do what. Like, I know another friend of mine didn't build the stasis gun for forever because he didn't think it really had much of a use, and then was constantly dying trying to scan Reaper Leviathans and shit, and then I had to tell him, like, oh yeah, it's probably a good thing to build, and he's like, fuck, I didn't even think to build that because I didn't think it'd be useful at all. So I feel like signposting, you know, what certain things do and, you know, what their purpose is and what in your life they could, you know, make easier would be a better thing the game can improve on. And finally, I think the traveling in Subnautica gets a bit excruciating at some point. Like, minor spoilers, like I'm gonna try to keep things vague here. As you go through the game and sort of understand the scope of the world, it's a pretty big world that you could explore. Like, yeah, I would say you could probably spend like 10 minutes or so getting from one side to the other on the fastest means of travel you have available to you, which is the sea moth. So it would take about maybe 10 minutes to cross the map in that. And after a while, exploration gets like really tedious. We're like, okay, I guess I'm just going to hold W for the next 10 minutes while I zone out and read Twitter or whatever while I'm traveling to this place, because I'm not really in any danger and I know all the zones at this point, and it's just a matter of getting there. So I feel like they could have potentially, I don't know, like given you a faster, maybe some upgrades for the Seamoth that let it go even faster than that, although there are issues with loading in that. And there's a spoiler I can't talk about that sort of fixes that problem, but you don't unlock it until like way later in the game. And especially, this problem comes to its own at the very end of the game, when basically, you know, I'm trying to think of a way to explain this without spoiling it. You're basically handed a list of things you need to get to continue. And these things are like really rare plants that you would have never bothered to pick up in the first place because they have no use outside of this one very specific like story quest, basically. So at the very end of the game, it's like, okay, before you can do the last thing you need to finish the game, here's a scavenger hunt for a bunch of plants in a bunch of different zones. And I was like, okay, I've already played the game for like 25 hours at this point, and I'm very sick of the traveling at this point, and I don't want to go around looking for that, so I'm just going to console command, cheat the thing into the game, and I did, and then it was there, and then I fucking finished the story. So I couldn't really be bothered with the final big scavenger hunt the game gives you, because I thought, you know, in addition to all like the problems the game has with travel times and of the zones sort of becoming boring once you know enough about them, dropping that on you as you're right about to finish the story, that was probably a bit excessive, or at the very least could have been done way earlier into the game, I think, and been way more natural there. So, yeah, those are the issues that I really have with Subnautica. Some things should be added to the basic list of things you have to start out with. Some of the zones aren't really scary once you know enough about them, and even the later zones aren't really that tough to get through. Sort of stuff like that. Things that can wear on you, but really only wore on me after I'd spent like 25 hours with the game. And that's one last thing I want to touch on. If you watch enough of my videos, you might know that I don't really have, I'm not really capable of playing games for long stretches of time. Like, there are some game critics who can, like, sit down to, like a 12-hour game and finish it in one sitting, and I think those guys are monsters, and I do not understand how they can possibly do that shit. Like, I play a game for, like, 2 hours at a time, and after the 2-hour mark, I'm like, okay, I need to get up and do something else, or else I'm gonna kill myself, right? I can feel my eyes glazing over, I need to go do something else at least for 10 minutes, and then I can go back to that for another 2 hours. So I usually have, like, an inbuilt time limit when I'm playing things, but Subnautica just fucking overwrote that, apparently, because the first day that it came out, I played it for like 10 hours straight, which is the first time I've ever done anything remotely like that in my entire life. Like, I think the previous record was like 4 hours in Factorio in a row. So Subnautica more than like doubled my like normal play session time the first time that the first few hours I spent with it. And that's just because it's such a good game and it is so special. So despite the problems that I've mentioned so far, I do think Subnautica is absolutely 110% worth your time. And yeah, it probably will end up being my game of the year this year. Hey, do you guys hear that? Sounds like the mail's here.
Mail time. Mail
time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Welcome everyone to the much beloved classic mailbag segment of the Circle of Jerks. Thank you everyone who sent in emails this week. Be sure to send yours in for the next Circle of Jerks episode to @ThatSyyGuy, or no, not @ThatSyyGuy. Send them into ThatSyyGuy@gmail.com and follow me @ThatSyyGuy on Twitter, which is what I was trying to originally say. So the first mail is from someone named Ben. He says, "Dear Scy, what have you been doing while you've been absent from YouTube? Much love, Ben." Well, what have I been doing? It's been about 2 months since I've really quit YouTube, I suppose. And here are some of the things I've been doing. I've been trying to learn to code. That hasn't gone very far at the moment. I've been trying to learn how to draw. That hasn't gone very far at the moment. I've been trying to learn how to play guitar. That hasn't gone very far at the moment. I actually just got myself a guitar for my birthday, and as well as the cable you need to play Rocksmith. So hopefully that will progress rapidly in the coming weeks. Tried to do that. I've been working out more. So I started doing my workout routine has been to wake up, do the 7-minute workout app, the sort of basic exercise that comes with that, and then do 20 curls on both arms, and then go run a mile outside. That's been my sort of exercise regimen, and I do that once every other day, basically. I've also... Well, what else have I been doing? I've been playing a few games. I just got Shadow of the Colossus today, that's been fun. I've been playing Subnautica, of course, obviously. A few other things here and there, hanging out with friends, mostly relaxing. Like, God, after spending the last, 3-4 years working YouTube full time, it's been really nice to just sort of detox and sort of get myself out of the mindset of make videos. So it's just, I've been having lots of nice relaxing time, lots of time to myself, lots of time for self-improvement. I've started a thing recently where I'm only allowing myself access to the internet for 1 hour at a time in the hopes that will improve my life a bit more, because I spend way too much fucking time on Twitter and Reddit, and that's been going really well so far. So that's given me a lot more time for my hobbies to sort of indulge in them. yeah, just general focus on relaxing and self-improvement. I am going to start looking for a job here in the coming days, and I will have to get like a part-time or full-time job somewhere else then. But for the time being, before that happens, I've been enjoying my birthday, which just happened. I've been doing Christmas, so lots of family events, lots of self-improvement, lots of stuff like that. So that's generally been in the interim, and in the coming weeks, I plan to, of course, make more Circle of Jerks, start looking for a job, and hopefully get way more in-depth on focusing on the hobbies that I want to improve on. Once again, that email comes from Ben, and thank you very much for the question. So, that was sort of the only decent question that I got. I got something else from Something Stupid that sort of ties in to what the last question was asking. He says, I'm curious what kind of job you're getting now that YouTube is done. Also, nice haircut. Thank you. Which sort of ties into what we talked about, but it's also kind of a different thing, so I guess I'll briefly answer it. Basically just anything that pays me money at this point. I might go work at like the local convenience store as like a grocery bagger. I'm planning on going back to college. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that in the last question. I was planning on going to college, didn't make the cut in time, so I'm going to have to wait until summer rolls around for the new semester to start for that. So until that point, I have to get a full-time job somewhere else. Pretty much just anywhere that'll hire me. I'm thinking like a local convenience store, like an HEB in Texas. I may go after a video editing job, but those are kind of hard to come by, and more importantly, is a very competitive field. So, maybe I'll go work at HEB and then on the side look for better jobs from there. So that's pretty much all I have in store right now. Just anything that makes you money, because I guarantee you it'll be more than fucking YouTube made of me, that's for damn sure. So it'd be nice to, not be living below the poverty line for once. That would be, because previously I had to aspire to poverty, right? So it'd be nice to be making a decent, livable wage for once. I think we can all agree that's a generally nice thing to have. So that's, a general goal of mine. But yeah, nothing particular, just anything that pays, basically. I am a whore, please give me money. Anyways, guys, I do believe that'll be about it for this episode of the Circle of Jerks. I still haven't thought of any additional segments. I've been tossing around a few other ideas. Like, I thought it might be cool to have, like, here's a weird song that I like and here's why I like it type segment, where I go in, because I have a shit ton of, like, weird music on my phone that I like but that everyone else hates. So it might be interesting to sort of dive into that and explain why I like certain things and what I think are good about them, which could then potentially sort of, lead itself to people discovering them more and liking them more, which I think would be cool. Just sort of a general, like, discovery segment. Like, I pick up, like, a random thing I find lying around my room and go, like, hey, here's this thing. I'm going to do, like, a minute-long review of it. I think it'd be a cool segment. Toss around some ideas in my head. Again, leave ideas for segments in the comments below. But yeah, I do believe that'll do it for this episode. So thank you guys very much for watching the second episode of the Circle of Jerks, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.